Welcome, everybody, to the Birdland Media Works podcast, where we feature authors, artists, entrepreneurs, the causes they care about, and some of the tricks of the trade. And I'm really excited because my friend and colleague and an amazing artist, Joan Peters, is with us today. Now, normally, Joan would be sitting side by side in the studio because we live near each other, but with COVID, this seemed more prudent. So, Joan, welcome to the show. I miss you.
Well, welcome, Danielle, and I miss you too. I'm looking forward to the day we can sit close to each other.
Absolutely, absolutely. Maybe take a road trip back to the bistro in Safety Harbor.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, give people a little background. Just to set the stage, Joan did the covers for all three of the data collectors, and she also did the illustrations for the Acting Out Yoga book, Anna in Paris. And she does enormous stuff beyond that, which we'll get into. But, Joan, just so people get to know you, you were born in Paris, and now you're living in Southwest Florida in Village of the Arts. So, how'd you get here?
Well, it's a long story. So to shorten it, I came to United States in the 70s with a job from a French company that was starting a business in New York. And a few years later, I met my husband and ended up staying here. And how did I get to Florida? Well, eventually we retired and it was too cold up north. So we ended up in Florida where everyone else ends up also. And that's how I got here. Basically, that's the short version of the story.
Okay. Well, maybe in future interviews, we'll dig in a little bit more too, because I know you have some fun stories. I also know in our conversations, you studied law and business, and I believe you said you were in real estate for a while. So, how did you discover art and when did this all come together?
Well, I think I was interested in art as far as I can remember. As a child, I was interested in art. And I lived in Paris, so I had access to most of the museums, and my parents took me there, and later on I went by myself. And in those days, the French system was very excellent, and I had an excellent art education. We always had art in school, and so I always loved it. But I realized that I wasn't going to make a living as an artist. And my father, who was a lawyer, pushed me into law. That's how I ended up in law school, and I graduated. And thanks to my degree, that's how I ended up in the United States, because the people who were opening an office were looking for someone with a legal background. So that's how I came to United States. But art was always something I loved. And eventually, when I semi-retired, and I'm always a busy person, just like you are. So I couldn't just sit home. So that's when I started doing real estate. And at the same time, I was also taking classes. I lived on the east coast of Florida near Boca Raton. And I took classes at the Boca Raton Art Museum, which has a very excellent school, and some of the colleges also nearby. That's how I started really getting back seriously into art, and that was in the late 1990s, mid to late 1990s.
Wow. So one of the things that I admire about you is you're always learning and developing your craft. And every time I talk to you, you're going to a different retreat and doing a different style and traveling. And in my head, it sounds magical, not being an artist myself. So can you tell us a little bit about what types of art you produce and which ones you're most attracted to, if any?
Well, like you just said, I like to explore. So I explore. I like novelty. I get bored rather quickly. So I like to explore new materials or new styles, and I'm always inspired by something I see. Like I'll go see a show about the highwaymen who were Black artists in Florida, and then I get so inspired, I go home and I want to do something in inspired by them. So currently, I do mostly oils, and because I love the outdoors, I do a lot of plein air, what's called plein air painting, which means that you're outside and you're on location. You don't paint from a photograph, and you just paint what you see in front of you. That's what I do right now.
I've heard, because a long time ago I used to model for Ringling, and the teachers used to say to certain students, I can always tell when you're painting from a photograph versus when you're painting in real life. What's the difference? Because they seem to have a preference for get out in the real world. Do you know why?
The Yeah, the big difference is that a photograph, the colors are not true, and they don't represent really what you see. The shadows are much darker on a photograph than they are in real life, and the colors aren't as vibrant. The other thing is, there's nothing like being outdoors and feeling the weather and the wind and the noises, and it gives a different feel. And the feeling is translated on the painting.
I find that amazing because you could never fool the instructors. I mean, the student would come in and they would think they were getting something over, and they're like, no, this is a picture. So that's so interesting that the
Yeah.
feelings come off of it and all the parts that make it. So I always try to describe on the data collectors, particularly this third cover that you did is so magical. And I don't know how to describe that. Does that have a type of art form? How would you describe, number one, what the type of art and kind of the inspiration of how you put it together?
Well, I guess when I talk to a writer who wants a cover, I'm trying to get inside their head because they already have a vision of what they imagine their cover to be. So my job is to try to get out of them what it is that they see for the cover. In your case, it's very easy because
I'm very simple in there.
you have an idea which is very firm, and you can explain it. In some other cases, the writers are not able to explain, so I have to sort of guess. But from what you tell me, I take notes, and as you speak, I imagine myself. I get a vision from what you're saying, and then I translate the vision on paper by doing a sketch, or maybe I'll do a little watercolor based on what you said, and then I put it together with on the computer. I use the computer to do the covers.
So does it have a kind of style? Is it abstract? Does it have a kind of defining style of art to it?
No, it depends on what the writer wants. Like I have some some writers whose covers look very much like a painting. In your case, it's more like abstract concepts that are put together, or imagined uh, people, with
I'm nothing if you
animal bodies, and so
did you like
you
my picture of marzipan? So for people listening, I am not an artist, but I did a little sketch. I didn't even want to show it to Joan, but I said I have him in my head. I did a little drawing of marzipan and colored him in and sent it to Joan because she made me.
but that was very helpful. That was very helpful because it gave me an idea of what you thought.
Yeah, and I have a confession. I don't have a fixed idea. I probably know about 30% of what I kind of see the cover being. And one of the reasons I like working with you, many reasons, you're a wonderful person and you are a great artist, but I could send you, here's a jumble of the ideas, and then you'll come back with something. And then I can look at it and say, more of this, less of this. Maybe we could add, and you figure it out. So it feels more like a collaborative, my initial
Yes.
thoughts and your vision, and then we create something completely different than because I don't even know what I want necessarily. So
Well,
I
that's what I like about working with you, that it's a collaboration and you give your input and you direct me to, the right place. So that's very useful and helpful, and I enjoy it.
I do too. So you do, as far as work, so you do covers for people and illustrations. I know people can commission you for different projects. Do you actually do like portraits of people, or do they ask you to go to a location, and like what kinds of projects do you work on?
Well, anything people want. And actually, recently I did a painting, an oil painting of that was a commission, and it was a horse with a little child, and it came out very nicely. So, but people have commissioned me to paint a pet or a house or sometimes a landscape. Like, people would come to my art gallery and they would see a landscape that was small sized and they wanted it to go over the sofa, so I would reproduce my own painting and make it bigger.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you have collections in France, Chile, the US. I might be leaving some places out. You can let me know. Any interesting stories behind any of these pieces, like a fun or scary or just something that happened?
No, not really, but I enjoy knowing that my paintings are in homes all over the world. And being in Florida, where I am, it's a tourist area. So I often have people from England and Germany and, South America, and they come and they purchase something that reminds them of their vacation or their stay. And then they take it back home, and sometimes they send me a photo. So that's interesting.
Have you ever walked in someplace and saw your painting or didn't expect it?
I don't know, not that I remember.
Because I have to tell you, one of our mutual friends sent me a snapshot. I think it was her mother or one of her relatives. I can't remember who, but she purchased the Anna in Paris framed cover from your art studio. Never
Oh,
actually read the book, but she loved
yeah.
the cover. And so my friend's like, "Your book's cover is on my mom's wall." And I'm like, "Oh." So I thought that was kind of funny. So who inspires you? What artists inspire you?
Well, many, but currently I like Jean-Michel Basquiat. Are you familiar with him?
You have
He was,
mentioned him before. I need to look him up.
okay, so he was an American um, black man, and he's our contemporary, so to speak. And he did very interesting. mm, I guess he developed his own language. He was originally uh, a street artist, and he became fabulous, and he inspires me. But I guess what I would like, which I haven't found quite yet, I admire the artists that do their own language, or they find their own style and their own language. And he was one of them. And it's very difficult to do. I'm not sure I've yet accomplished it. And I do a lot of landscapes, but I really like abstract art, or art maybe more conceptual, but that doesn't sell.
I
In
think
my gallery, people want to see the palm trees and the beach and the places they've been while they were on vacation.
I was gonna say I have you in 3 different rooms. There's an alligator right in front of me, and I have an abstract leaf design in the other room, and you gave me a plein air painting, and then I have the illustrations for the covers that you did and in Paris in my office. And then I also have, because Joan moonlights as at least an instructor to me, because I asked, gave me an art lesson, and I've had never had an art lesson past elementary school. So I framed this. It's an awful picture. So I painted the beach. Joan had to help me, and I framed it and signed it and put it on my wall. Now I look at that ugly painting and think, yeah, I'm not an artist, but when I look at it with joy and I say, oh, that's the day Joan and I painted together.
I bet you it's not an ugly painting. The
Uh,
same way marzipan was a fun drawing.
he was fun to create. Yeah. So what are some of the misconceptions about being an artist? And I ask this as a writer who has been hired to do different projects, and people don't understand the work that goes into it. They think you just sit down for 20 minutes and you're done. So, what do you find with being an artist?
Well, I guess I was going to say something in the same vein. I was going to say that people think it's easy. Like some people come to my gallery and they look at the painting and they say, "Oh, I could do that." Well, no, I'm sorry, they couldn't, because the if you're a good artist, you make it look easy, but it's very difficult and it takes a long time. And often people come in and they say, "Well, how long did it take you to do this?" Well, an hour and 40 years, because
Right.
40 years of training, and maybe the painting itself only took a few hours, but it's all that goes behind it, all the training, all the classes, all the workshops, all the reading, all the trials and errors. So I don't think they realize how much goes into a painting.
Yeah, it reminds me, and I could have the artist wrong, and I don't even know if it's a myth. It was a Picasso, supposedly. Somebody asked him to draw something, and he drew it on a napkin and handed it to them. They said, "How much?" And he's like, $3,000. He's like, "But it took you 5 minutes." And he said the same thing. Yeah, 30 years and 5 minutes.
Yes.
So, but what do you like most about being an artist? Compared to real estate and law, it's quite a bit different.
Yes, I guess it gives you more freedom. Maybe it doesn't feed you as well, but it gives you more freedom. And because I enjoy being outdoors, we're in Florida, the weather's usually nice, especially at this time of year. So I enjoy being outdoors and painting on location. And being an artist can be a lonely pursuit, because if you stay in your studio, you're by yourself, but I need the company. So I belong to various plein air groups locally, and we meet. We can go and there might be 5 or 10 people painting in the same location. So it gives you a way of not being alone and being inspired by others, and maybe ask for help when you get stuck someplace. And I like the camaraderie of being outdoors with other artists.
Oh, I love that. And
Yeah.
and as an introverted writer, I should do more of that. I actually, right before COVID, I'm like, maybe I should join a writing group and collaborate, because I do tend to collaborate with other entrepreneurs such as yourself and friends of mine, particularly women in business who are like have different careers going on, but I don't really connect as much with other writers. I should probably take your advice and kind of make that a goal, because I like
Well,
that idea.
that's the problem of being an artist. It can be a very lonely pursuit. So,
I don't feel lonely though, but I know
no, but
it's good for me to socialize. I know it's not good for me
no,
to
I
sit
mean,
behind the
when I say
computer.
lonely, I don't mean feeling lonely. I mean, you're by yourself when you paint, or you're by
Yeah.
yourself when you write. And if you do that too long, you could be a hermit.
You you start seeing little fi fireflies with human heads and
Yeah, little marsipans are flying around.
I'm curious now, the painting behind you, who did that? Is that a
Oh, that's a lady from South America, and it's a pretend Frida Kahlo type.
I was gonna say it kind of resembles, Frida Kahlo, but I was
Yes.
like, I'm not sure that it was,
Mhm.
but it's very pretty, and so it's not yours, but it's just
No, it's not mine.
like. So you had mentioned, because we always like to give a shout out to like special causes and things, and you have a very interesting one. Can you tell us what's important to you? What causes?
I guess many causes are important to me, and there's so many, it's hard to choose. But one that's really something that I care about is public radio and public television, because they constantly get defunded and they really need help. and I find that their programs in general are well balanced, and in particular with PBS, for example, I enjoy their news programs. They have many programs about art, um, like The American Experience is a wonderful program. I was watching yesterday, they had a wonderful show on painters, and it's very inspiring, and they have the full story. So I like to support them, and I'm happy for people to try to support public radio and public television.
I agree with you 100%. So I'm glad that you shared that. Now, before we wrap up, are there any projects that you're currently working on that you'd like to share about? And I definitely want to make sure we give like your website so people can find you and your work.
Well, I'm still trying to learn. So currently what I'm working on is Zoom classes that I'm taking, not that I'm giving, that I'm
Oh,
taking.
let me know when you start giving classes online, Joan. I will be your
Uh,
first student.
and I'm excited about it. It's a little different from taking a class in person, and I don't know how it's going to work. So far, I've only been watching, but presumably you're supposed to watch and paint at the same time, but I haven't been able to do that yet. So it's going to be interesting. Um, but that's all we can do with the COVID. So
We're starting to hone in. I've been taking the piano lessons, and it's when you don't have somebody sitting next to you to say, put your hands here, hit these keys. So I'm constantly turning the computer to the keyboard and turning back. And now we've kind of got it into a flow, but it took a couple of lessons to get into sync. It's a different way of learning, but I am enjoying it, and I'm actually it's coming along nicely. So let me know how that goes. So where can people find you to buy all of your work and
okay,
finish
so
$1 million project?
my website at this point is joanpetersgallery.com.
Okay.
So that's one way to find me. And I also have an Etsy shop, which is also Joan Peters Gallery, all in one word. And normally, when the pandemic ends, I do have a shop, and it's in the Village of the Arts, and it's at 1210 11th Avenue West in Bradenton, and that's how people can find me.
I will make sure to put all of that in the description of this show.
Good.
It was so good catching up. I wish I could give you a hug in person.
Well, I'm hugging you virtually.
Aw,
Thank you for the interview.
thanks, Joan.